Imagine you drive through a tunnel completely surrounded by solid rock, and the moment you come out, the entire skyline appears right in front of you. That has to be one of the most spectacular commutes to work in the entire country. Hey, I'm Daniel. I like first-person drives and cities. That's why one of my favorite hobbies is flying around in Google Earth. And the city today has always fascinated me. 2 rivers, dozens of bridges, and a tiny downtown surrounded by some of the most over-engineered roads I've ever seen. That's Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Pittsburgh's geography is unusual, even by American standards. Downtown sits on a narrow piece of land where the Allegheny and Monongahela Rivers meet to form the Ohio. It's a location that shaped almost everything, from where people built their homes to how engineers designed roads, tunnels and bridges to reach them. But it also shaped the city's story. How did this difficult landscape turn into one of the most industrialized cities in the world? What made it grow so fast, and what caused it to decline later on? Why does it have more bridges than anywhere else in America? And how is Pittsburgh using all that old infrastructure today? That's what we'll look at in this video. Let's explore Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's layout doesn't look like most American cities. There's no wide, flat grid stretching endlessly in every direction. Instead, the city sits in a valley where 2 rivers meet, the Allegheny and the Monongahela, forming the Ohio River at what locals simply call the Point. That spot was the reason the city exists. In the 1700s, whoever controlled that junction controlled river trade deep into the interior of North America. That's why the British built Fort Pitt there, giving the future city its name. Today, you can only see a highway interchange cutting through it. I don't know what to think about that. Anyway, this special geography also meant building in a place that had almost no flat piece of land anywhere. The land rises sharply on almost every side. Neighborhoods like Mount Washington, Duquesne's Heights, and the south side slopes sit hundreds of feet above downtown. In between are narrow valleys, steep cliffs, and ridges that split the city into pieces. Even today, Pittsburgh has some of the steepest residential streets in the country, and a lot of stairways. That's good thigh training with every walk, I suppose. For early settlers and engineers, that geography was both a challenge and an opportunity. Flat land along the rivers made perfect space for factories, warehouses and rail lines, but it also left almost no room for the city to expand. So people built inclines to climb the hills, tunnels to cut through rock, and long bridges to connect neighborhoods that were only a few hundred meters apart but separated by a river or a ravine. This natural terrain didn't just define the look of the city, it shaped how Pittsburgh grew, where people lived and where factories were built, and it created a foundation for everything that came next. The rise of an industrial powerhouse in a place that by any normal logic should have been too complicated to build on. Once the geography was conquered, Pittsburgh's location turned into its biggest advantage. The rivers weren't just scenic, they were transport routes. Iron, ore, coal, and limestone could all be moved cheaply by barge, and everything met right here at the Point. Coal came from the nearby hills, iron from the Great Lakes region, and the finished steel could go anywhere by river or rail. By the late 1800s, this natural network helped Pittsburgh become the steel capital of the world. Companies like Carnegie Steel and later US Steel built enormous mills along the Monongahela and Ohio rivers. The glow from the blast furnaces lit up the sky at night, and by the early 1900s the region was producing more than half of America's steel. The industry defined everything: jobs, neighborhoods, even the skyline. Tens of thousands of immigrants arrived to work in the mills and mines, and Pittsburgh's population exploded to nearly 700,000 people by 1950. It was a classic industrial city, dense, loud, and constantly working. But there was a price. The air was so thick with smoke and soot that streetlights stayed on during the day. Photographs from that time show a city under a permanent haze. And when global competition increased in the 70s and 80s, that entire system began to collapse. Steel production moved overseas, mills shut down, and tens of thousands of people lost their jobs almost overnight. Neighborhoods that once thrived around the plants were left struggling. Old industrial corridors along the Monongahela fell silent. Some turned into brownfields, others were simply abandoned. Pittsburgh's population dropped by half in just a few decades. Today, the city itself has around 300,000 residents, less than half of its mid-century peak. But a larger metropolitan area, which includes parts of Pennsylvania, Ohio, and West Virginia, is still home to about 2.3 million people. Many of them are living in former mill towns that have slowly found new roles in the regional economy. Pittsburgh's geography left engineers with very little flat land to build on. Downtown sits in a valley where two rivers meet, surrounded by steep hills on almost every side. To reach it, every route has to cross a bridge, follow a narrow riverbank, or pass through a tunnel. That's why Pittsburgh ended up with around 446 bridges, more than any other city in the United States. They are not just landmarks, they are a necessity. The same goes for the tunnels that cut through the ridges and connect outer neighborhoods with the urban core. Without them, the city simply wouldn't function. But squeezing all that infrastructure in such a limited space came at a cost. When the interstate system was built in the 1950s and 60s, engineers ran the highways right along the riverbanks, the only flat ground available. It made commuting faster, but it also cut downtown off from the waterfront. Large sections of both riverfronts were turned into corridors of ramps and elevated lanes, and for decades people in the city barely had access to their own rivers. And of course, there's also Point State Park, at the tip of downtown, where the Allegheny and Monongahela River meet to form the Ohio. It's a genuinely nice park, open, green, with a large fountain at the center built on the former Fort Pitt site. But it's also cut in half by highway ramps. People from Pittsburgh, let me know what it really feels like. Is it a nice park? Still, Point State Park became a symbol of change when it opened in the 1970s, showing that parts of the waterfront could be reclaimed for public use. And in recent years, more sections have followed, with river walks, bike paths, and the Three Rivers Heritage Trail slowly reconnecting the city to the water again. After the steel collapse, Pittsburgh faced a question that almost no other American city had to answer at that scale. What do you do when your entire economy disappears? Instead of trying to bring the mills back, the city rebuilt itself around something else: knowledge, medicine, and technology. Universities that had always been here suddenly became the center of everything. Carnegie Mellon University turned into one of the world's leading institutions for computer science, robotics, and artificial intelligence. Just next door, the University of Pittsburgh and its medical network, UPMC, grew into one of the region's largest employers, driving innovation in healthcare and biotechnology. Old industrial sites were turned into research campuses, like Hazelwood Green, a former steel mill that's now home to robotics labs and tech startups. The same rivers that once moved coal and steel now carry cyclists, kayaks, and tourists. The air is cleaner, the water water clearer, and downtown is once again a place where people actually want to live. Today, Pittsburgh's population is smaller, but the city is far more diverse in what it does. It's still shaped by its geography, the bridges, the tunnels, the hills, but it's also shaped by the people who decided to stay and rebuild it. Pittsburgh isn't perfect. Parts of its infrastructure still feels oversized for its population, and you can still see traces of the industrial past everywhere you look. But that's also what makes it interesting. It's a city that had to engineer its way through every problem it faced. And it's still doing that today, just in a different form. If you enjoyed this look at Pittsburgh and want to see more videos like this, consider subscribing, leaving a like and supporting my work directly on Patreon. It really helps me make more videos like this. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.